Yo.
New to this one.
Enough all.
You need some protection.
Like what?
This one entitled When You Hold Me. Horsepower Production. Starting with this track because it's a banger and it is also the first installment of the legendary label Tempa 001. Could also have started with the B-side of this record, Let's Dance, which is also a banger. Just such a representative track of what the sound was to come on this label. It embodies that darkness in the garage. This one from the year 2000 and as you can tell it very much is garage. But it's a move towards something darker, something deeper, and certainly a representation of, what was to come with the sound. That darkness that would embody what dubstep went on to be. This one came 1 year later, entitled Sholay. This one's interestingly a personal favorite of Sarah Lockhart, one of the founders of Tempa, of Forward, of Ammunition. These vocals would become characteristic of the sound that would follow on that label. Not entirely, but there's definitely reference to this kind of sound. For example, Nomine's chant has a similar vocal going on. And it's important to know that this sound it has many reasons for having come about, but an interesting butterfly effect is artwork after artwork. Having his studio in Big Apple Records on the top floor, I wasn't there, but I've heard that brought in this sort of garage, darker garage sound to some extent. I think it's easy to bring together the name of Tempa with artists like Scream, Banger, Loafer, Youngster, and so on. But this horsepower, high plains drifter era certainly laid an incredible foundation for what was to come. These are installments of early Tempa records, what I'll be talking about today. This one's 2001, the last one 2000, and we're going to continue 1 year at a time. Up next, we're going to have yet another horsepower tune. This one's a bit slower. Interestingly, the first couple have been at around 138, which is the former name of dubstep. The origination of that term, dubstep, is certainly debated who came up with it. But for some time it was known as 138, my lucky number, because these tunes were around the BPM of 138, but now dubstep is synonymous with 140. But this one, 1 year later, 2002, came out on vinyl in 2002. It came out an album release in 2003. This one's Gorgon Sound by Horsepower Productions.
Cause when it comes to music, is we are the gaga. Yes.
So, in as much as this sound is slower than what dubstep would turn to become, and in as much as it followed from that 138 stuff that we had before, the tracks from 2000 and 2001, the sort of identifiable factor about that kind of sound is those wobbly bass lines and the darkness that would be absolutely characteristic of the genre that went on to become dubstep in its beginning. We know it now as this massive EDM genre, or not necessarily EDM, but just a massive genre. It's being played at these huge festivals, but the early originations of this sound are absolutely linked to a darkness which some suggest is symptomatic of it being very much London focused in its beginnings. Clubs like Forward were clubs like Plastic People, nights like Forward in London, Big Apple Records in Croydon, where people like Scream and Benga started to learn about this music. Hatcher was their main seller. And that was mimicked in the art style of the pictures of the DJs and artists that were taken by Sean Bloodworth, who absolutely identified what the scene meant. The pictures were stripped back, dark, not much eye contact, not much bling, which was a certain departure from the garage scene, which had become, as far as I'm aware, it was sort of kind of flashy. You bring your jewelry, you wear like a shirt, nice clothes. What Sean embodied with his photography was just the music. It wasn't about the people, it was about the sound. And that's going to be something that's very noticeable in this next track, which I see as a sort of glue between what we've just heard, some sort of two-step dark garage, and what we will go on to hear, which is certainly dubstep. This one is Dub Express by Hatcher. I think in this track it's very clear to see how the drum patterns moved. This feels to me a lot like a bridge between the garage and the dubstep. Moving into 2004. This one, Milo, Give Jar Glory. What a tune. What a tune and what an important tune. Came out on Tempa All Stars Volume 2, the Tempa All Stars was massively influential collation of music. And this notion of All Stars, the way that they were set out is something that I feel like I haven't really seen much of elsewhere. I think it's really great, the way that they would sort of collate stuff. And this is an interesting one, particularly because it's on Tempa All Stars, but it is Digital Mystics, DMZ, and we're talking about Tempa today, but we could also spend a while talking about what Mala, DMZ, what all of that meant for the scene. Today is the 13th of March, 2025. On the 5th of March, 2005 was the first Digital Mystics dance. So quite some time ago, we could call it history. But that tune marks a departure, I feel like, from those garage drums. And it's not like, it's not like it was a drastic change. It was a progression that manifested through a lot of tunes. That one I felt like had to be played for 2004, just to emphasize the importance of DMZ alongside Tempa, alongside so many people, labels, dances that shaped the sound. I think that the next song is the Tempa tune. It signifies an incredible amount for dubstep, and more than just dubstep. I mean, it is just one of the best tunes ever, I think. I remember before I started mixing, before I really found a passion for electronic music, playing it in the shower, and I was just like amazed at the space in it, which is so interesting because I feel like these days, I don't mean to be one of those people that paints it like the past was some great time and that, nothing's good now. Music now is better than it's ever been. These times there were no DAWs. People were producing on Fruity Loops and some people on PlayStation. Now we have enough plugins. We just have so many plugins, so many DAWs, so many tutorials. And so I think that you have to, the subtlety in the difference between this sound produced on Fruity Loops, on PlayStation, whatever, with its gaps, with the space, and production nowadays, which seems very full and like there's a lot going on. You can just, if you go on Serum and get some effects, some presets for Serum, you can just get the most powerful noises that can take up, they can just sound so big. But what dubstep means for a lot of people is a lot of things. But one of those things is just the subtlety and the confidence to have the space in the music and what that allows the listener to experience. And no song, I think, is more of a good representation of that than this one. So let's hear Scream Midnight Request Line.
Are we on the air?
Yes, you are.
Hello, Ma. I'd like to hear a new beat on the request line.
Okay, you got it. Coming up.
tune. I mean, it's hard to speak on because it's so good, and it speaks for itself. But there's a lot to say about that tune. As far as I'm aware, it came out in 2005 with the B-side being I, and then it was a part of Scream's 2006 album, Scream. It's had undeniable influence in dubstep. I was just saying, I think that hearing that on a good system is something that is spiritually fulfilling for humans. It's, you know, it's so notable that there's sort of things about it that come to mind just hearing it. Youngster, who, again, lots to talk about, very notably shaped a lot of this sound. Insanely talented at mixing. His 2000, I think it was 8 years ago, so would have been 2016 or 2017. His Boiler Room is just an absolute education on dubstep. But he is known for being a ninja on the decks, but particularly, well, not particularly, but as well as that, for playing Request Line twice at once and chopping it up, which is sick to hear live, and just cool that a song can have like that kind of effect where it has like a, you know, it goes on to be more than just a song. It also reminds me that it has a big influence in grime, that tune. There's a 2006 Plastician and Skepta set, which is just unreal. As a fan of dubstep, as a fan of Skepta, wearing his jacket, that is just golden. That set is just incredible, but he spits on Request Line in that set. And it was known to have a grime influence, which makes sense given the sound. But yeah, I mean, such a tune. The definitive tune for Tempa Records, I think. Although it's important to recognize those early years, that garage sound, and how without that there wouldn't have been the Scream. And without the Scream, there wouldn't have been what dubstep has now become, which is this enormous genre, and the butterfly effect is intense. I mean, I wonder how many people have met at festivals which are playing dubstep music that they went to because they like dubstep, and now they're together. I mean, that's just one of the implications. So up next, we're going to continue with some Scream. This one's a personal favorite of mine, but it was hard to choose. We're looking at 2006 now. It was hard to pick a tune for this year. Loafer released Mud in 2006, I think, and Punisher, Pinch tune. But this one I discovered quite late. I discovered it from a Youngster interview, and I think it was in the background. But this one is by Scream, and it's titled Untitled. Let's hear. Should say before the bass kicks in that the choice not to go with the two aforementioned tracks is related to them not being on Tempa. I'm aware of this. Also, on the topic of Scream, here's a picture of me and him, Glastonbury. Good times. Yeah, that was a Percy of my personal faith. I think again it just represents the dub sound very nicely. I saw something about it, just really like that tune. Now, we've spoken a lot about Scream, as we should, but here's another name that needs a mention, and that is Benga. This one, Roller. Tempa All Stars, Volume 4. You can hear just what a producer Benga is. I mean, these tunes. This one 2007 and it holds up so well. And it is a precursor of what was to come with his sound. Diary of an Afro Warrior was to come in the following year, I believe, and that is an album. One of the best. So Benga, I mean, I spoke to Youngster before coming here. Of course, someone with a very important opinion on this type of music. And I said, what are the unmissable tunes? The obvious ones are Request Line and Night by Benga, which will be the following track of 2008. For me, 26 bass lines might just have an edge over Night as a tune, but what Youngster said, which I think is very true, is that Night had an important legacy, and that is something that I can empirically verify, having heard it at clubs. I remember I saw Kira drop it after Burn Them Bridges, Skin on Skin. So that was a really interesting blend of this sound, which I've grown up on, and, you know, Skin on Skin sound, which is a lot newer and something that I also love. But yeah, so the next tune is another just banger. And it's so representative of Tempa. And it's kind of representative of the move towards the more full and loud dubstep that some call brostep. And to be honest, I don't know much about that sound. It's never really interested me. And there's a lot of dubstep fans who vehemently hate that sound. I think, you know, if people enjoy it, then I think people should listen to it. That's completely makes sense to me. And I think we should be grateful that we had this period and we have labels like Tempa who have just put out all of their tunes on Bandcamp. Yeah, we got to experience this sound. I think, you know, I don't think that Benga is like solely responsible for the move towards brostep, etc. People talk about tunes like SpongeBob, Koki. But I think that there's this sentiment of people feeling upset that things started to move in that direction. But I think this era, these tunes are just timeless and they still bang in clubs. And we should just love them for that, I think. Not only did Benga have a big influence on the club scene, but it's notable to mention his production of Katie on a Mission, what that meant for dubstep breaking into the mainstream sound. That's a classic. Cortez recently used that for an advert, so that's still holding up, and was a massive tune by two very talented musicians. But without further ado, I think it's time for Benga and Koki, Night. such a tune. I was chatting to a producer recently, DJ Zinc, and I told him that I never have liked the sound of a flanger, which was stubborn, and this disproves it. Does make sense in that build-up. Yeah, tune. And on the topic of my ignorance to do with flangers and DJ Zinc, who did a remix of Night, I believe, we can segue on to the next tune, which I suggested that Request Line is the Tempa tune, and it, I think, is. Night is an honorable mention. There are many honorable mentions. The label is much more than just Request Line. But this next tune is probably my favorite of the entire Tempa catalog, which is maybe sacrilegious because it doesn't represent that shift from the garage sounds. It doesn't really encapsulate the label, but it just bangs, this tune. And it represents a link with techno, which speaks to me personally. I'm a big fan of techno. This is definitely by no means a techno tune. But from what I know, which is very limited, but from what I know, is it Mode Selector was like doing techno stuff at this time? Or maybe it's Headhunter. Yeah, I think Mode Selector. But yeah, this one's going to be my personal favorite. This one's entitled Prototype, and it is the Mode Selector remix. Here we go. As with a lot of these tunes, you kind of need to hear them on a system, on a good system, to feel the full power. And that's something about dubstep that's really nice. They put an emphasis on the system, which I think it should be on the flyer, the system. And it's representative of the culture that it came from, the dub culture, from which it gets the name dubstep. goes on for a while. It's a deep one, it's a good one, and I apologize. I've probably been fucking with the gain a lot, because I just want to hear it loud, this tune. You just want to hear it really loud. It's just one of them tunes. Yeah, so that is the first half, at least, of that remix. As I said, a personal favorite of mine, and something good to almost end on. We got one tune left. I think it displays the range of Tempa, which I think that the next song is also going to corroborate. It is a constantly evolving sound. That's something that Youngster has talked about in interviews. He also has a role to do with A&R and Tempa. Just describing the sound, it is something that evolves. There are certainly things that seem to underpin the sound, but tunes like that just show that it can vary quite a lot, but there's a maintenance of quality, which is really nice. The next tune is the most recent Tempa installment. It's by 96 Back, and it's entitled Heaven Bent, off of the Catford Jewels EP. It's a 3-track EP. Yeah, we're gonna hear where Tempa's at now. I think it's a tune. I think it's a banger. And it's nice that it's coming out now after all of the catalogue has been put out on Bandcamp. It feels like there's a sort of cushion behind. There's like a push following. It's a lot of pressure to follow, but that whole catalogue just bringing forward again what Tempa is about. So I'll stop waffling, and we're gonna hear Heaven Bent. Third track on the EP, but this one's my favorite. It's very dark, and it has that space that I miss in music, where it just doesn't have too much going on. marks a juxtaposition from the influx of short tunes that drop quickly, which are great and are cool. I think a lot of artists are upset that they feel that to explore this kind of creative, building, growing track, they would have to move away from what might be most supported by labels and what's going to be the most popular. And I think that it's nice that there are labels like Tempa which focus on just good music. And I mean, yeah, this is like a 7-minute long track, which isn't completely impossible to find these days, but particularly with dubstep, the sound doesn't tend to grow in the same way. I think this track really illustrates that quite profoundly. As the last bit of the track plays out, some things to mention are, one, why did I not mix the tracks? The answer is twofold. One, because I think it's hard to talk and mix. And two, because I'm not super used to the software and hardware. But good workman doesn't blame their tools. And in fact, there's a further point, which is that I think if you want to hear someone mixing dubstep really well, especially tunes off of Tempa, listen to a youngster set. And yeah, I mean, I think that a good summary of all of this information is that it's my take on it, and I was not there when this stuff was happening, which may be indicated by potential mistakes that I've made. Tunes may have come out in the wrong year. Sometimes it's hard to know when tunes came out, because dub plates were circulating around forward and stuff, you know. Tunes could have been around for ages and then come out. It's hard to keep track. But I'm grateful to be able to share some of the greatest tunes from Tempa Records. Again, there was some chronology involved. We started in 2000. We ended in 2025. But we took a gap. We went from 2000 up to 2009, year by year. Then we skipped to 2025. Yeah, I can only say that my vocabulary and selection and the amount of time that I have to speak is going to make it hard to do justice to what Tempa is as a label. And I would massively encourage anyone who likes any of what they just heard to check out Tempa's Bandcamp. They've got tunes on there. Do it on a Bandcamp Friday, maybe, so that more of the money goes to the artists. We love supporting artists. And yeah, thank God for dubstep.